right, we're back. You're in the hot seat. I'm leading the conversation today.
Works for me. Makes my life easier.
So you already know what we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't know what you're going to ask me, but I know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, what very exciting thing happened back in November?
You ran your first 50K.
No, this is not about me. This is about you. Something exciting you did.
Something I said. Okay, well, my book came out finally. Yes, there it is. It was almost a little over a year in works, and kept it pretty quiet. It didn't go much outside of us and one or two mentors and colleagues and the athletes that I interviewed, I should say. But it was a long process. I learned a heck of a lot along the way, not just about the craft that we do, but about writing a book and publishing and all that. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be involved in it, but interesting to know, I suppose. But it was it was
and
cool.
We're going to dive into all of that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, wherever you want to go, I will answer. I'm going to drink coffee while I do it, but yeah.
So walk me and us, whoever is listening, walk us through when the idea for this book first took shape.
Yeah, it was almost a year ago exactly, November, December of 24 is when first thought about doing it. Really started putting, I guess you can't say pen to paper because it was all typing, so fingers to keyboard. In January. I don't even think I told you for a little while until the first draft was done. I think I was just hammering away after clients and stuff, and you just know that I'm busy doing whatever. And so I don't think I told you till February or so that I was.
I think it was January.
Was
maybe.
it January? Okay, January.
Yeah.
So January, and at that point there was most of a first draft done. And I will always tell people I am not the strongest writer. It's certainly the worst of my communication domains. As an orator, I'm way better. And so I had, Cass, our mentor at CEP, take a look at it as a subject matter expert. I hired a developmental editor who was actually an OTQ marathoner in the US to give it a good developmental edit, because I don't know anything about writing a book. I barely did well on essays in school, let alone a long-form book. But I knew the subject and the topic and the substance was something that could be really good. And so I kind of had this first draft done, and we had the developmental edit done. And then we moved to Flagstaff for 3 months. And in March, I want to say, we got to meet some really cool people through some of my rehab background and helping people there. And so there was this really cool opportunity where it was well, I can interview all these pros and Olympians and pro marathoners and all these people to be what is your guys' take on this? How do you guys navigate all these things? And so I didn't have to rewrite the book then, but I had to shift around a bunch of stuff so I could integrate that stuff, because I knew the subject matter was really good. It's evidence-based. It's what I do daily in my clinical practice and my coaching practice. But then it was wow, this is really going to add some, substance and, durability to the topics, in that there's real people who, use this type of stuff and share their experiences in terms of coming back from injury and, performing on the biggest stage. We've got, Bryce Hoppel in there talking about coming fourth in the last Olympics in an American record, the only, male American on the trackside. The only event for the men on the trackside in the U.S. to not medal, and just navigating what it's like to be a pro and such. And so it was kind of cool that I had the book already written, and then these people talked about a lot of the subjects that I'd already done. So for me, that was a validation, not of me, but of the body of work in the book. So yeah, that took a little bit longer to redo, because I wanted to make sure those fit kind of seamlessly along with the anonymized client case studies that I put in there as well too. So there's a nice peppering of athletes I've actually worked with from a run coaching or a clinical side, and then also these pros and what they do in their daily training environment and daily practice as well.
So I actually want to bring you back a little further. So you said about a year ago the idea for this book came to life, November 2024. But you actually start your book talking about something that was set to take place in October of 2023. So 22. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so at that time I was coaching and I had a clinical practice, but it was more so disordered eating and a little bit of sport performance. So that was my first year, like coming back to triathlon. I had done triathlon as a teenager, and was like okay, but like I'm not a swimmer. I'm an adult onset swimmer, and debuted in 70.3 at Mont Tremblant. Qualified for Worlds straight up. I missed the podium by like 2 seconds or 3. I got kicked on the back hill. It still haunts me to this day. I suppose I don't have the plaque, otherwise I'd have it back there because that was a cool one. But and with that, I was fortunate enough to get the auto qualifier for World Champs for 70.3 in St. George, and we had flights booked. We had the whole trip, everything planned out. Training was going so-so at that point. I was a little banged up physically. Like I know I reference in the book having an injury. I've competed my entire career with injuries, so that's nothing new. But what really kind of, you know, it's like the first 3 pages of the book, I suppose, so I'm not giving anything away, so you can preview it, I suppose. But was that I really didn't feel like I was going to be able to be good enough or replicate my performance or actually be able to show up on that world scene. Like it almost felt like what I did in Tremblant was a bit of a fairy tale. And so, you know, with all that in mind, I actually pulled the plug, like didn't compete. We actually, our flights were into Vegas that year. So we went to Flagstaff. That was my first time in Flagstaff, and said, I was like, screw it, we're just going to go over here. And I remember getting caught up in the ideas of like, okay, well, what if you don't do well? And like, there's a lot of descents, and I'm not a really good descending cyclist. I'm fairly nervous with that. And then also like, oh, I got to travel with the bike. And I started building like all of these problems out in terms of why I wouldn't be able to compete. And that was really that shift for me. It was like, ah, frig, there's got to be something kind of to this mental side. And that's where I started shifting a lot more my learning and reading and clinical work to the mental performance side. Like I'd always had a capacity of that with coaching. Like I think when you work at the level I did in high performance, like you're part therapist half the time anyways for these athletes. And so it was really about, okay, I've got all these practices from on the track and on the road and on the trails that I was kind of just doing, and I've got this clinical practice. So how do I validate what I was doing and like better understand the psychology of performance? And so with that, I tried to, you know, do that on myself. You had a trying year in 2023 as well with the fracture and such. So, you know, we worked with that. Was that 23 you had the fracture?
That was 24. 24,
okay. So we worked on that in 24. And so it was all of that, and then just continuing to work with athletes, both clinically and coaching, that made me think, hey, this could be a good direct resource. I didn't want it to be too textbooky. Like I remember when I messaged Cass the first time, I had all these notes from over the years that I'd had for the idea of if I ever, you know, wrote a book or something. Never planned to. And he was like, dude, you don't want to write a textbook. You're not a professor. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I tried to write this a little bit more narrative and hard hitting and stay away from the like, here's the exact tool and why it works. And, you know, here's all the research behind it. Like anybody can look that stuff up. I wanted this to be like a quick, succinct, like book that people can go to and pull tools and like do in their daily training environment and take away today rather than have to be a reflective research-based piece.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned earlier, like your power is being an orator, is how you talk to people. And I think that you very much adopted that style into your writing, recognizing you're not the most technically sound writer, but you can speak to people really well. And so writing the way that you speak and being able to connect to people on that level, I think that's what makes it a bit more approachable and a bit more practical, so to speak. So to take a small pivot, you know, as coaches, as athletes, as clinicians, as counselors, we hear a lot about mental toughness. But how would you define or describe this concept, like to your own athletes or your own clients?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Mental toughness gets like thrown around just as like a good, or we have to be mentally tough team. You hear that from coaches all the time. And I think what it really means is being able to have adversity and battle back from it. Now, so like you can think of it this way: it's like something happens, a stimulus happens, and then you have a behavior. So like from psychological, like it's stimulus, behavior, right? And so I think mental toughness is being able to take on greater stimulus and having better behavior. I'm not saying better in terms of performance per se, but better relative to what your norm or past is, right? And so I think if we look at mental performance that way, I think it also fits within the psychological framework of understanding things are always going to happen to us, but we have autonomy and control over how we respond and react, right? Like at the time of filming this yesterday or today, I saw this morning, like Patrick Mahomes just blew out his ACL last night.
Shit,
Yeah.
no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like he put out a tweet, he's like, I don't know how I got here, but we're going to come back and all those things. Right. And I look at that and it's like, I could tell you if I was Patrick Mahomes, and I never will be because I can't play football, but I would be so devastated. I don't know if I'd have a tweet like that in me. Right. And so when I look at like mental toughness as an idea there, it's like he had this crazy stimulus, like giant guy basically smash him and take out his ACL. So figuratively and literally, that was a massive stimulus, right? And so over the years, his mental toughness is compounded because he's had all these stimulus come in and he's had to change his behavior, right? And so that's the way I look at mental toughness. I don't think it's something we either have or don't have. I think you can get better at it, but it can also deteriorate as a skill. And you see this sometimes as high-level athletes who have had injuries before and have had to cross-train, and then they go a year or two without being healthy, and then all of a sudden having to cross-train like gives them this existential dread. It's like, well, it's just a mental toughness tool or stimulus that you now have to adapt to like you have previously. So I like to think of it as a continuum that can be trained in the same way that, if you're training for the marathon, you tend to be really aerobically fit. But then when you go back to the 5K, you're like, oh, I'm missing some speed here. I got to bring this back, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very much the same way. It's dependent on the stimulus that's coming in and the behaviors that you're choosing to respond with rather than react with.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of hearing is that being mentally tough is not that you never encounter tough situations, tough days, workouts, races. It's how you respond, how you're able to bounce back from the injury, the tough day. And so this may be a hot take, might not, I don't know. But do you think people and athletes that have encountered tough situations are at a baseline more mentally tough than those that have never come up against something difficult in their life?
I think in part, yes. Like, I think anytime, I'll put it in more simpler terms. Like, if I run more than you, there's a higher likelihood that I'm going to be better at running than the person who's never run, right? So you get better at things you do more often. But that said, there's people who have immense innate talent to run decently well off not a lot of experience, right? So I think it's a bit of a spectrum. But I do also think it's a carryover skill, right? So depending on what's happened in life, how you've navigated the curves you've been thrown relationally, vocationally, interpersonally, right? Like those all carry over. And I think mental toughness, I think, is a skill like bravery. So if you look at exposure therapy as an example, right? So you're scared of spiders, right? So we might start, the first session talking about it. The second session, I might have like a spider in a terrarium back there, right? If you were sitting across from me in a room and you're like petrified from it, right? And then the next session, I might have it in front of me in a terrarium, right? Like you're not holding it or anything. And we might do a couple sessions like that. And then I might put it on the table in between us, right? And then, maybe I'll put it on your lap eventually. And then maybe I'll have you take the lid off. And then maybe I'll have you put your hand in but not touch it, etc. So we'll build that up, right? And what we know psychologically that happens from that is bravery increases, right? And so I look at mental toughness the same way. And what we found in the exposure therapy literature is that bravery doesn't just grow in relation to that spider in that example, or your fear of spider, but across all domains in life. And so I think mental toughness is an interchangeable skill that can be developed like that has carryover to different places.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. Again, I don't know that there's one universal working definition of mental toughness, but I know people describe it in different ways, or maybe some people more accurately than others. So I wanted to get your take on that. So again, as coaches, as mental performance coaches, as running coaches, we also talk a lot about, and you write in your book about handling pressure and managing nerves. So again, why do you think these concepts are so often misunderstood in sport, regardless of what the sport is?
Internally, everyone thinks we have a mental toughness problem. Externally, it always looks easier for what everyone else is doing. So like I can tell you from working with pros and elite athletes, everybody watching them would be like, oh my God, they're so mentally tough. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't see them bawling and puking 10 minutes before the race. You just saw them go out and perform, right? And so we all struggle with it because it's not something that we can like calibrate and or see in others. Or, right, you get beat. Let's just use running as an example because it's easy, right? Somebody beats you in a kick, right? And it's like, well, they're just mentally tougher. They want to go. It's like, yeah, but you just raced for, let's say, 2.5 hours in a marathon, 3 hours in a marathon. You're just going to forget the 99% of physiological stuff that happened and instantly go to mentally weak. So we all think that we're mentally weak because we can't see what mentally strong actually looks like. We assume it in others, but we don't have the whole picture. And so that's where, as clinicians, like, I get to talk to like 20 to 30 people a week and see all this, let alone in my coaching practice, like my run coaching practice, right? And so what you start to realize is everybody thinks they're deficient in this. And I don't like agreeing that they're deficient. I just think you just haven't upskilled this domain yet, in the same way that for some people, like if you're moving over to trails, you better figure out how to run downhills, because that's going to be a big part of it, right? Doesn't mean you suck at trails or you're going to be horrible at trails. It's just you have a skill that you need to develop.
And so when you have an athlete, for instance, that's saying like, hey, I'm feeling really nervous before this race, before this workout, whatever it is, how do you respond to comments like that about?
Well, the first question I ask is why. It's like, why are you nervous? I don't know if I can do it. Okay, well, what tells you can't do it? Right? Well, I don't know. It's just a hard workout. It's like, well, have you never done a hard workout before? I know I'm being a bit like, unsensitive to the question. Depends on the person how I would respond to it. But, I think I would help them understand that those are feelings speaking and not facts. So the example I use in my clinical practice, like, your sweater is green, the picture behind you is green, right? I could just say that I feel like your sweater is blue. And you'd be like, nah, Brant, it's green. I'm like, no, I feel like it's blue. And you'd be like, what facts do you have that it's blue? Well, I just feel like it's blue, right? And you'd be like, I'm really not going to listen to you about the color of my sweater right now. It's like, yeah, that's probably the same way you should treat some of these feelings, right? I want to be clear. I'm not saying disregard all feelings, right? But if we have feelings that aren't led in fact, why would we listen to those?
You actually have a really great one-liner that I've kind of stolen, and I've used it with a couple of my clients when they are feeling nervous, because again, and this is a side tangent, but so many athletes that I'm sure you work with, I work with, they think nerves equals bad. Nerves equals not fit, not ready, not going to do well. And how I try to reframe it, and I know you probably do similarly, it's like, nerves just show you care. They carry, like, they show that you want to do well. You're invested. You have skin in the game. Because, and again, this is how I personally explain it. Maybe your way is a bit differently. But I say, if we think of nerves on like a scale, right? A complete lack of nerves could, not saying it does, but could be seen as apathy. I don't really care. I'm not really invested. Don't care if I even show up. Don't care if I do the thing. Doesn't matter anyways, right? It's like that kid that doesn't bother studying for the test. Not really a great place to be. And then on the other far end of the spectrum, if your nerves are so crippling that like you're throwing up beforehand, you don't even toe the line for the race, that's not a great place to be either, right? So we want to find this sweet spot where our nerves work for us and not against us. And so again, I always kind of try to reframe those nerves to my athletes as like, it just shows you care. You want to do well. You want to perform to the level of your capabilities or your standards, right? So that's just something that I wanted to bring up. And yeah, your pithy one-liner is facts don't care about feelings. And I think it is so great. So you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, have you said that to any of your clients or athletes before?
All the time. Like, I think it's far too easy now to get caught up in feelings or feels, whatever the kid, I've heard some kids say, I think that's what it means. I hope that's what it means before I sound like an idiot. At the end of the day, you don't finish a race and go like, I feel like I won. It's like, were you first? Okay, you won, right? I don't care if you feel like you won. When the results are printed, you weren't number one, right? That's a fact, right? And so, I know that's a harsh kind of like sentiment, right? Like, we can all feel like we won our battles for a race, etc. I love that, right? But people don't walk around, I feel like I won. It's like, no, you didn't. You were like 376. Like, you didn't win, right? And so that's what I mean when I say like facts don't care about those feelings. And to be clear, there's lots of great feelings, love, happiness, etc. You should listen to those, right? But when you're starting to get into a higher stress situation, you're going to feel more negative emotion, right? And that you don't feel that always before a workout, right? You don't feel that every day. You don't go through a whole build every day going, I suck, I'm not good enough, I can't do that. Like, you wouldn't even get to the line, right? And so we want to like disregard those feelings. I've got another analogy that I use quite a bit for athletes with this, which is the annoying salesman. I know you've heard me, I think there's a video on it, where we've all had it, the internet person or driveway sealant or whatever it is, comes to your door. It's always dinner time. They knock on the door. I want to sell you something, right? And so you go to the door and you're like, nope, no thanks, not interested, glad to hear it, good luck, have fun, right? And then you come back to dinner with your family and you don't spend the next half hour complaining about the annoying salesperson at the door, right? You accept that they came and you commit to go back and have dinner. Like if we were having dinner, I went and opened the door and there was some like internet guy and we were having a nice dinner, and then I come back and for the next half hour, all I talk to you about is how annoying it is there's salespeople there. I'm the idiot for listening to that feeling. I should have just accepted that it happens and commit to coming back to the task at hand, having dinner, right?
Well, you've let that salesman then hijack the dinner, right? Hijack the conversation.
Exactly. Like I expand that for athletes who like really like let that bug them. I go like, you know, you don't let the salesperson come in and be like, okay, here's my router. Did you want my Wi-Fi password? Would you like some of the dinner? I'll pull up a plate and a chair for you. You can spend the whole evening with us. Do you want the like access to my like online banking too? Like I'll give it to you. Like you don't let that annoying salesperson ruin your life, right? And so in sport, you shouldn't let those annoying feelings or negative feelings ruin your sporting experience in the same way that you wouldn't invite the random guy in who's trying to sell you internet.
Yeah, and another, like, I do share that analogy with a lot of my athletes as well. And then sometimes for some of my younger athletes, I'll be like, hey, you know, have you ever seen that cartoon where the character walks around with that storm cloud just over their head for the entire episode? Yeah, and I'm sure lots of other characters, whatever, in different shows or movies. And it's like, we don't want that, right? Like, you can be upset or disappointed about the thing or annoyed about the thought in the moment, but then stewing on it or ruminating on it is not serving you moving forward. And you actually wrote a really great blog post about this. I know we're pivoting from the book, but you wrote a great blog post about this on the CEP website. And basically your thesis or your takeaway for this blog post is that emotions aren't good or bad, they're contextual. So when are they helpful? When are they not helpful? How long do you sit in them? Because again, grief can be helpful in the moment, or regret can be helpful in the moment. You choose better next time, you take accountability for your actions, whatever. Those emotions or feelings can serve a purpose for a time limited and situation specific, you know, amount of time. But if that bleeds into the rest of your day, your week, your month, whatever it is, they're no longer helping you, they're hurting you. And so I do a whole session with some of my athletes and I get kind of like cheeky and I'm like, okay, like what do you think good emotions are? And I'm like setting them up, right? And I'm like, okay, what do you think bad emotions are? Oh, well, anger, fear, da-da. I was like, great, we're gonna totally flip this on its head. And then I give them examples how regret can be good, anger can be good, happiness can be bad or inappropriate in the situation. So again, I just really like this blog post that you wrote because there are no good or bad emotions. It's just when are they showing up? How are they either helping or hurting you? And I think that also goes back to, is this supported by facts, right? Like I've talked to a few of my athletes about one girl that I coached, and she was like a week or 2 weeks out from her marathon. She's like, I'm not fit, I'm not ready, I can't do this isn't going to go well. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be super uncompassionate in the moment. I was like, why do you think that? Well, you know, I didn't run 38 kilometers in my build, like as a long run. I'm like, okay. I was like, or, you know, I had this one bad long run. I'm like, great. I want you to go through your training, scroll back through 12 weeks, 14 weeks, look at every single data point, every single easy run, long run workout that you did. That's your facts, right? One bad run or one missed run doesn't, you know, define the worth of a build like entirely, right? Or feeling that you had one bad run isn't the same as like actually seeing that you stacked the bricks and put in the work. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that idea of like handling pressure and managing nerves, because this is a universal experience probably for every single athlete, whether you're an age grouper, a professional, whether you've done this 100 times or you're doing it for the first time. You know, we care about our sport, we care about our performance. So that shows up a lot, but maybe how it shows up or how it impacts that person's performance looks a little different, right?
Absolutely. Like I can tell you as like someone who used to be somewhat decent and now is just trains, and a mental performance coach. Like I think I've only raced once this year. It was in Mesa at the half. And I can tell you like lining up, I'm like, at the time I was like 10 minutes slower than my best. Long ago. And I'm sitting there like feeling like, oh man, we drove all this way, like we got a hotel, we did all these things. My wife, my dog are like in a car somewhere, you know, waiting for me to finish. Like, what are my clients gonna think if I don't run well, or like I'm slower than people I count? Like that pressure was all there, and like I had to sit there and go like, none of that actually is factual or matters. Like this is like slightly harsh, so I have to know the person when I do this, but I did this with an athlete the other day. where they're talking about, what happens if I don't race while I do this? And I was like, okay, well, your husband's going to leave you. You're going to be homeless. You're never going to compete again at any level. Your life's going to go completely sideways, and that's it for you. And they're like, not the speech they expected, right? And I was like, okay, now that we have the worst case scenario that's like literally never going to happen another way, can we just figure out what's actually going to happen here, right? Because that's the path that things are going when we start to go down that ruminating negative pathway, right? So it's like, okay, let's just call it out. Let's go to the absurd, right? Oftentimes when we go to the absurd, it makes it a lot easier to come back to what's actually like normal, right, and factual or likely to happen.
Yeah, and I think you loosely touched upon this, but it's like what's actually at stake in the moment. Like, do we want to do well in the race, the thing, the presentation? For sure, but like, what is the worst possible scenario that's going to come out of it? Usually it's not that bad. And like, this is the exact speech I gave myself and then relayed to you after I dropped out of the Berlin Marathon. I was like, well, my husband, aka you, is not going to divorce me. My coach, aka you, is not going to fire me. My family still loves me and thinks I'm crazy for doing this running thing. My friends and training partners still, admire me and support me. It's like, so if the worst thing that happened was that I didn't cross a finish line, there's always going to be another, there's going to be another start line. There's going to be another finish line. There's going to be another race. It didn't mean I wasn't disappointed in the moment, but it's also not the end of the world, right? And I think sometimes athletes, we have this tendency to create these, I'm not saying there are definitely some high stake environments and high stake moments, right? An audition, a draft or whatever, but a lot of the time it's another game. It's another practice. It's another workout. Those are lower stakes environments compared to some other higher stakes environments. And sometimes I think we catastrophize or blow things out of proportion for what they actually are, which then we tense up, we play safe, we play timid, we don't perform or compete to the level or ability that we want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
We've obviously taken a big side tangent, so to go back to the book, did anything surprise you about the writing process, either about yourself or about the material that you were engaging with and trying to create?
I wasn't surprised at how many red edits there were between Cass and the developmental editor. I can tell you that much. I think I was surprised that it came together as quickly as it did. I mean, I barely did well at essays in school. So I think what was interesting is I was really passionate about writing and I was really passionate about this project. So it made it a lot easier to be engaged. I think I also, because I recognize that writing isn't my best skill set, and I went to people like Cass has got an amazing book that's hockey specific, and Allison, my developmental, it was I trust these people. They know this stuff. They've been involved with great books. They've written great books. They're excellent at that stuff. So it was really easy to accept that feedback. And so I thought that was pretty cool because a lot of what I've done has been more siloed or individual, and you just kind of you're judging yourself kind of thing. So to open that process up and be judged by others who have actually done it kind of thing, it was ooh at first, but then it was no, these people actually care and want this project to do well. So I thought that part was cool and interesting. I learned what I'd always kind of thought, that I totally hate promotion stuff. So that's probably why this has taken so long to do. I hate that part of it. Even, exploring on the YouTube and stuff and asking people to subscribe. So I that's not me, the salesy type stuff. So I really don't like that, but yeah, that's probably about it.
Yeah, and for those people who don't know, maybe didn't know you had a book or didn't know it has come out or whatever, you self-publish this, right? It's not like you phoned up Penguin, Random House, or another one of these major publishers. So kind of what was that process like? And maybe you having a bit more autonomy or ownership and accountability over that process.
Yeah, so I had thought about going that way, and I'd read quite a bit about how, if you go with a publisher, my understanding, I could be wrong in this, I'm certainly not an expert, but they have a lot more autonomy on timelines and when it goes and where it goes and royalties and all these things, including some of the subject, not entirely. And so I just thought, one, I didn't think of myself as some big author that deserved that or needed that. I was this is my first book, we'll see what happens. So I went the self-publishing route through Amazon, which they've got their own specifications for like cover size. Like I hired some people to do all that stuff because I was like, I'm not a tech person. Like I don't have time or the thought process. Um, and you know me, like in terms of like visual aesthetic, not me, like not me whatsoever. So I was like, okay, get experts. This is not good. Um, so it was a bit of a process. I'm impatient sometimes, so a lot of the back and forth and going on, I was like, oh, this could be done. Like we could be done with this kind of thing. So it was all that, but yeah, it was self-published on Amazon. I think on two, day one or day two, it went number one in triathlon, which was pretty cool. So officially, I'm an Amazon number one bestseller, I suppose, um, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that was like really interesting. We haven't done like, I'm not doing ads. I'm not like out there, like out of the back of my car trying to sell books or anything like that. It was really, I just put it into my athlete list and was like, hey, I wrote a book. Some of them knew it was coming and put it out there and was fortunate enough that people liked it and bought it and did those things. So it's still, I checked on it earlier today. It's still like rolling decently well in December here. I learned also through this process that there is a giant, I hope I don't get like blacklisted for this, but there's like a giant marketing arm towards like becoming number one in something. So I was like pitched a bunch of these services while I was looking about like, we'll do this like Amazon number one bestseller campaign. And I was like, okay, well, how do you do that like organically? And I guess there's like websites where you can trade like reviews with other authors and then like you review their book, they review your book and stuff. So it's not really like sales or anything. Or you can like to become an Amazon number one bestseller, you just pick this like really niche category where it's like outdoor, individual, like super niche thing. Like you pick these like categories. And I was like, I don't care to be number one bestseller in like some random little thing. I was like, I'm going to put it in running, individual sports, and triathlon. Those are the three I put it in. So it went number one in triathlon again. I think it hit number three in running at one point. And so like I also learned all that means is like within a day you had the most sales. So I say like I can brand it as an Amazon number one bestseller, but it's not like I'm the number one best-selling author of all time in triathlon books in Canada. So that was like a little bit interesting to me to like see and learn that it's like it doesn't hold as much value. Hence why when I said it, I was like, oh, I'm an Amazon number one bestseller. But I think at the end of the day, like I wrote this actually like help athletes. I didn't write this as an envision that I'm going to make $1 bazillion off selling a book on mental performance, but certainly wanted to be able to draw people to resources. Like there's QR codes in the book to the YouTube channel and the website where we have free tools and such. I wanted to have that as a big part of it to just continue like giving to athletes like we've done with the YouTube channel now and the book as well.
So, of all the chapters in the book, which one to you feels the most personally meaningful, and why?
Probably, I would say it's the competitive identity piece because I think that's something that we as athletes in the endurance world don't do as well. Like everybody knows like Kobe, the Black Mamba that Todd Herman helped him with. And you hear all these other ones across professional sports, like when they're on the rink, they're like this, or when they're on the field, they're like, like this, right? Or they've got their nicknames for on the field versus off field and stuff. But in running, we tend not to have that. And so I know for me, it helped a lot in terms of like, I even was thinking back when I was writing this over my career, like some of my good races where, you're prepping for them, you're thinking about it. It's like, hey, here's who I want to be today. This is how I want to act. This is how I'm going to think about it. When this happens, this is what I'm going to do. And so I thought that as a framework was really powerful for people to have. Like that's the one that I felt would be the most meaningful to people. It's also why it's like at the start of the Ignite type method that I put forward is, identify your competitive identity. Because I think everything else flows from that. If you know who you want to be on race day, it's a lot easier to respond to things rather than react. And that's kind of a big idea I talk about in the book a little bit and all the time with clients. I want you responding to the stimulus, not reacting to the stimulus.
Earlier on the call, you mentioned that you were very fortunate to conduct a handful of interviews, which initially was not part of the plan, right? Like, as you said, you had a first draft already either created, submitted, etc. So thinking through all of those interviews that you were very fortunate to conduct both in person in Flagstaff and then when we eventually came back home to Canada, which one maybe either surprised you the most, or did you find the most informative? Or you could answer both.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not trying to be political here in this first part of my answer, but they were all amazingly unique in their own ways because they all had different stories and narratives that speak to the athlete experience, right? And I think you sat in on a couple of them, like just kind of like on a couch over to the side while we were recording them.
Working on my laptop, yeah.
Yeah. And I do think I'm going to answer with three because they were super unique
Yeah.
and interesting. But I think M. Durgan sharing her pathway into sport and some of the trials and tribulations she has had was a really interesting interview and understanding from like a mature, seasoned, elite marathoner, especially with what she was going through with injuries at that point. And then Jessa as well was a really interesting, like, to hear her mindset. Like, she already had like reset routines and mantras and stuff that she told herself during her marathoning, and so that was really cool. And then Bryce was phenomenal, like so giving with his time. Olympic fourth place Bryce Hoppel in the 800, and I'd seen it with athletes not at the Olympics but in like Worlds and World Cross and all these things up close with athletes I had coached. Like what that call room, like pre-race, like all of us who have had like pre-race, you're in the nerves, you're in the gaggle of people on the roads and stuff, but you're not really like competing with each other, so to speak. But like in the 800, it's like one guy, one woman per lane. You're in a call room staring at the people that you're trying to beat. You've got for him a minute 40 basically to go out there and do it. And so to hear his process and how he reflected on coming fourth, right? Like I don't think anybody in this world in their right mind would think fourth at the Olympics in the fastest Olympic final ever. Running an American record is a failure, but it could have easily been taken that way, as an athlete. And his insight and reflection to look back at that season and be like, I know that I geared and did everything to be as ready as possible. It doesn't mean that he didn't want better. Like he honestly did. Like, of course he did, right? But he was at peace with knowing that he did everything that he possibly could have done for that. And so each of those three, and again, I don't want to discredit everybody else who was, that I'm very thankful for was in the book. But those three like had very unique stories and ideas that were just like phenomenal to the athlete experience that I think really enhanced some of the tools we're talking about in the book.
I have this quotation saved, on one of my notes, and I'm paraphrasing, and I wish I wasn't because it's just so much better reading it verbatim. But it basically says like confidence isn't like never messing up or never encountering hard things, right? It's knowing who you are, like in those moments, right? And knowing that you're going to be okay even if you come forth or whatever. So I just maybe wanted you to reflect on that quotation a little bit and kind of like having that very stable inner self-confidence regardless of any outcome, what that kind of means to you as a coach.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you look at a lot of top performers across any domain, one of the things that you see consistently is that they all have secondary pursuits to their primary pursuit. So they're also like really talented or like doing other things, right? So I know in the organizational psychology literature, there's this idea that when you hire someone, you should make sure they're passionate at something else as well too. Right. So it's like, they have a basket weaving class at 4:30. It's like, okay, you let them off that because that side passion really helps them fracture, not in like a broken sense, but like separate, maybe is a better word, their identities, right? And when you have multiple identities that are strong and set, it makes it so much easier to handle anything that happens. And this goes both for like failures and successes. Like the athletes who don't let success go to their head have a very stable identity of who they are, regardless whether they win or lose, right? And so I think you hear the term like identity crisis all the time. Usually it's in your 40s or something, but it happens post retirement as well too, right? Where people don't know who they are after athletics or professional sport or whatever it is they've done, and that's because they don't have a solid identity of them. They just have them as an ex-athlete or them as a runner or them as a basketball player or whatever it is. And so setting that identity and really understanding who you are starts to build the framework for how successful you can actually be in whatever pursuit or pursuits you are actually going through.
Yeah, and this is something like not to this huge or super in-depth extent that I chat with like some of my athletes. It's like, okay, who are you, right? Oh, you're a daughter. Oh, you're a sister. You're a student. If you're in elementary school, high school, whatever, like you're a friend. Oh, and you also do gymnastics. Like that's cool. But there's so many other parts of our identities outside of the sport domain. And is that part of our identity so important and beautiful and wonderful? And of course, we want to nurture it and develop, absolutely. But it's not the only part of you. And again, not to make this about me, but like that was what really allowed me to come back after this big disappointment of Berlin. It's like, yeah, this is important to me and I wanted to do well, but like shit happens. I'm not a professional. I'm not getting paid to do this. Like I do it because it's fun and because I want to explore my potential, but it doesn't mean bad race or DNF means I'm a shit runner or I'm not fast or I can't do this. It's just like we all have those days, and that was not my day apparently, right? But it didn't affect any of the other parts of my identity, which allowed me to bounce back really quickly.
So yeah, the easiest way that I describe it to athletes, I could do it with you right here, is you're a different you to me. You're a different you to your sister. You're a different you to your brother. You're a different you to your dad. You're a different you to your mom. You already practice having different identities. I'm just asking you to make one that's sport specific for racing. And so like if you get in a fight with your sister, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're a horrible family member and you can't go to your family. It just means you and your sister are fighting, right? And so that's the same way we have to look at sport. It's like, okay, well, you've got this like sport identity that's you on the competitive side, right? Or you have one for the daily training environment and then one for competition. And just because one of those doesn't work out doesn't mean that the rest of them crumble. That's why it's a competitive identity, not your identity.
Yeah, and I always use this like again cheeky little example because again we talk about this in our practice at CEP. It's like creating that competitive identity, that alter ego, right? It's like what are the traits, the qualities, like how you want to show up, like feel like, think like, talk like to yourself, etc. And I said like you actually give yourself, in air quotation, permission to demonstrate these traits that you might not when you're sitting in third period math class or whatever, right? I said, the best of the best, right? The NHL players, the NFL players, whatever your sport domain is, they are tapping into these traits and different personalities when they're on their field of play, court, ice, field, etc. Right? But I'm like, that same person's probably not checking someone into the cereal aisle when they're doing their grocery shopping or filling up their, their car with gas. It's like they allow themselves to be a slightly different person in these moments of impact, these moments of importance, but they're also able to switch it off when they go about their day-to-day lives, right? So it's tapping into that identity at a specific time in these specific moments, and then, hey, going back to all the other sides of your identity when you're not wearing that hat or on that field of play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I guess for anyone listening, for anyone who either has already read your book or maybe is planning to read your book and planning to buy it, like what is one or two or three like key takeaways that you want them to get from the book or you think they'll learn from the book?
I think recognizing that whatever mental toughness or confidence or whatever kind of mental problem you're coming to sport with, it's not fixed. It's not like set in stone. It's trainable. Like if you suck at hills, you can get better at hills. If you suck at downhills, you can get better at downhills. If you aren't good at the marathon, you can get better at the marathon. Like it's a skill set like that. It just needs to be practiced. It just needs to be purposeful. Like if you're training for the marathon, you need to be pretty purposeful in training, right? In the same way that if you're training for speed on the opposite end of the spectrum in the 15 or the 5K, like you need to be purposeful with it. And so what I tried to do was give, daily tools and examples. I think like I like narrative. It's one of my like therapeutic domains is narrative therapy, because we think in terms of narrative. So I wrote this book with the idea that we could start to reshift that narrative by asking some of the questions, doing some of the tools and exercises in a relatively short order. So that way you can start to change the narrative around who you are, how you compete, etc. So yeah, I think hopefully that answers the question, but those would be kind of the big takeaways I would hope people either looking to get the book or people who have got the book recognizes that it is a skill that is trainable. And if you want to get better at hills, you probably need to do hill repeats or work in the gym. In the same way, if you want to get better at confidence or mental toughness, you got to do some stuff that's directed towards mental toughness or confidence.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to make sure that you mentioned? I mean, this is your show, this is your book. Is there anything you want to leave people with?
No, I mean, I just welcome any like comments or understanding. As we said from the beginning, I guess I'm an author now technically because I've published a book, but I don't consider myself a writer. I am considering a second book on a different topic, but comments, feedback, would love to hear it, even if it's not the nicest. I would love to hear it still, so I can actually get better and challenge myself with this skill as I progress forward. So. Other than that, there's if you do buy the book or you listen, or no, I don't have the audio book up yet. I have to record that at some point. But if you have it on like Kindle, there is a QR code. You can go to the website. There's worksheets that you can download and print. Like I'd encourage you to get those. So they act kind of as a sidekick to the book. So make sure you get those because then you have something tangible to work alongside the book with, because you can do them in tandem, like with the chapters and different tools and such. So yeah, that would be the only thing. Yeah, make sure you access those so you get the full experience of the book.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for allowing me to play host and to put you in the hot seat for a second or third time. I can't remember now. Yeah, okay. All right, well, until next time.
Yeah, thanks.